What's up? What's up? How's everybody's weekend? What's up? It's Monday. Mediocre Monday. And I'm holding a masterclass at mediocrity. Alright, so there's that.
This is stuffed.
Okay. Yeah, you can bring them in, let them in.
I'm gonna see Jim's bowl. Sorry.
Mommy. Hard way around. Start from Apex. See who's on. Grim's on. Alright. Oh, session expired. What? Why is this streaming never work? What's up, Opie? Welcome to the fun show, Opie. Bam. Is it working? Is it working? Alright, looks like it is. G-Force is ready. I don't care. I don't care if G-Force is ready for some dumb shit. Thank you.
Watch your feet.
Yeah. Alright, let me, I got this Mickey Mouse I gotta put in a safe place. I need that Mickey for later. Alright, let me get Grim in this. Let me... Get him up. Oh man, alright. At least it didn't fall and make a mess. So let's see, Grim says be on in the Fumon. Let me see what Zero's doing. And I gotta do my social media post. I already got a video up that I was gonna post a couple days ago, but then I went, actually on Halloween, and I went with the pictures of the dogs. Let's tag some people real quick. Put Grim in there. Put her in there. Put her in there. Just so I can get some likes. And I mean, I gotta cheat the system. Clean them all up. Boop, 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 boop. Mr. Armadazi. Alright, that's good enough. Good enough. Facebook. Boom, boom, Twitter. Tumblr. Message from Mr. Zero Hour. Location, my place of business. And let's do. Hey, what's up, people? It's that time again for a masterclass in mediocrity. Stop by, say hi, and watch me make a fool of myself. They pump us up. They pump us up. They pump us up. It is for another hashtag. Let's do a little Apex Legends clips. I hope I did everything. I just did. Yo, yo, yo. What up? What up? What up? What up? What up? Same shite, different shite.
That doesn't make sense.
I mean, same.
How's the same shite, different shite?
It's. You know. You know what it is.
Oh, I know.
Let's see. So I need 2 more daily challenges to get the alternator skin.
I got it today, just by accident. I wasn't even trying to.
I need 3 items looted out of a Lifeline's care package. I think that's also a weekly thing. I need stuff looted from my Lifeline's care package.
Yeah, apparently I had 2 left, and they were like Mirage, knockdowns, and pistol kills, and I just got it all in my first game.
Nice.
One of them was with a
Wing man. Got the main wing with the wing man.
The main wing.
Alright, so Zero said he'll be on a little bit.
Yeah.
So we get to get a full squad.
Literally, that stuff playing. I was sick of playing these shitty randoms.
I'm sure. Yeah, I was out in the living room with Kim. She was, well, we were taking turns playing some of the game, and so I wasn't paying attention to my phone. And when I was coming in to set up the stream, oh shit, I forgot to pick Lifeline. I saw that you had texted. You asked if I was playing, and then when I said yeah, like 7 o'clock or whatever, you responded like 7:20, like, all right, yeah, I'll be on a little bit. And then it's now 10, and I saw that you were logged on, but hey, yo, get down. Okay, you can have that. Saw you were logged on, but it was you were in like the main menu or whatever.
Oh my god, is teammate really gonna land in my bin?
I landed in like a out of bounds zone, so
I got a gold stabilizer.
nice. I got an alternator.
Apparently it doesn't on my Mozambique. Did you not even go in the
No,
car?
oh, we was trying to get something, so I was distracted for a second. So I landed like some bullshit place. What up, Zero?
Much. It took me a minute to understand the Bohemian Rhapsody thing. I was like, Is that
People
auto?
don't say what?
He yeah, he sent me a message the other day that called me
Who's shooting at us?
Broheim.
Were they up top? I don't know where they are.
I don't know. Our teammates zipping.
Wait, who's where? Oh, they're up top?
Oh, he's up in the cart. Crawl off. Oh, I guess he was getting executed. We can't get him. But yeah, so he called me Broheim, and then, I don't know, it just made me think of Bohemian Rhapsody. So I called him Bohemian Rape City.
Oh, what? Look. Motherfucker, man.
Oh, I walked right into that fucking grenade. Yeah.
Did you?
I got some heals, but I got hide for a second.
Shit. Can we even
No.
get up there or what? Isn't there a way to climb
Not
up
without a
there?
robot, I don't think.
Oh, why didn't he crawl up?
I think he was. Because he was pinging enemies like right in front of him. And he wasn't crawling off. So I assume, give him the benefit of the doubt that he was.
I'm hearing somebody else.
Yeah, somebody's zipping across.
Is that him? Oh, it's probably him. I saw online there's a way to climb up there.
Damn, they just
Oh,
fucked me up. I need to heal again.
I don't know how that would work. Fuck, do you need heals?
No, I got some. Yo, bro, stop pinging their shit.
Yeah, we can't get your banner, dummy. Ah. I did like 57 damage. Pop out again. Oh man. I got fucking laser from somewhere else.
there's
somebody on
the guy up top.
the shit right there. I didn't know that.
Getting
Dumb
covered.
teammate trying to fucking help him out the whole fucking time. There's somebody I think on
Yeah,
top of
guy
this
right
shit.
up here. Yep. Alright, now we can get 0 in here.
Cool.
Alright, so that was a big goose egg game. Like my favorite.
Big ass goose egg.
Get this.
I saw some shit on Facebook, and it said like I'm not laughing at this because it's fucking fairly
laughing
lame.
at
He's laughing at me. Definitely laughing at me.
He's fairly
This,
lame.
I saw
Oh,
this stupid
shit.
ass
He's not even being
shit on.
general about it.
I'm not even laughing at you. It's not even funny. No.
Not even laughing at this. This shit's just
Yeah.
lame. I'm laughing at something else.
No, this shit says
Oh.
it looks like the chill pill I took this morning was a placebo, and somebody underneath it commented, "LOL, take CBD, I do," and people start replying to her, and one person's like, "I almost wrote the same thing," and then the same person
Take what?
said,
Take
Take
yeah, CBD oil.
Oh, CBD.
and like the person below was like, I almost wrote the same thing, and then the same person said, then the same person that made the original comment says, it's awesome if you get a good quality, and then somebody else says, yep, gotta look for the seal, and then somebody else says, a specific brand, and the original commenter's like, I actually sell CBD, send me a message.
Yeah, can I
It's
place an order
like-
for pickup. I mean, on delivery.
So the whole thing's just like a set up to
Yeah.
sell CBD.
267
Her comment-
0332.
Yeah, off of a lame ass fucking meme that just says,
03.
the chill pill I took this morning appears to be a placebo.
I'm-
That's, I mean, you gotta
That's
hustle, but-
pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
AIRBI.
If it turns into some sales, I'm not against
Buffalo
it.
Yeah.
Pizza. Large.
Oh shit, a buffalo
That's
chicken
it.
pizza, that sounds good as shit.
Zeticus,
Yeah.
what's happening?
Fairview. Yeah.
It's going.
Oh, not too much.
Okay, and what's the total on that?
$36.99.
2481.
55.69.
Is that how much it was?
No, he said he'll call me back in 2 minutes, but I'm not gonna be able to answer the fucking
He
phone.
can't tell you how much a large buffalo pizza is, like on the phone.
What?
He said Fairview as Fairview. I'm like, it ain't Fairview, it's Fairview, motherfucker.
You better get my street right, bitch.
God damn. It's literally 3 blocks away. You're gonna call my street Bearview?
Bear.
He had like a heavy ass accent. But I'm like, yeah, bro, that's not what I said. I didn't say no Bearview. I spelled it with an
Hey,
F,
you're-
not a
hey,
B.
you're-
I even spelled it for
You
you.
weren't FaceTiming with him and he saw your computer screen, maybe.
No, I was FaceTiming with him. Yeah, that's what happened. He saw me looking at the bear views. I don't know. So Joe landed in London.
Yeah, this shit was garbage. Mozambique.
I need me a Viz ass.
You get
There's
the
a white
pizza
pizza.
from a local place. I mean, like, not a chain.
Down there. Oh,
I don't
it's
like
not a
chain.
chain.
I don't
There's
like
only
chain.
one as far as I know.
I don't like
Yeah, that
chain,
sounds delicious.
Oh, I
places.
just had a missed call. Motherfucker called me back.
I mean, it's probably like $11.
Goddamn, let me hide the corner of the fucking phone. I forget what it is. It's like 20 something. Like, hello? Hello? Yeah. 1650. All right, cool. All right. Fairview. Yeah, it's just a couple blocks away. FA. Yeah, you got it. No problem.
Not Bearview, motherfucker.
Again, he's like, what guy got Fairview? I'm like, yeah, dude, it's not Fairview. It's literally like 3 blocks. Like, what are you, retarded, bro?
He's like, oh, sorry, dude, I live 4 blocks away from work.
There's a flat line.
There's too many
Over
blocks.
here.
Too many blocks. I see it.
There's also a long.
I got a
It's a-
prowess. Yeah, if we find
It's
Slug
interesting though. We have a. I just heard on the news or whatever. There's an American
Bearview?
pizza shop. No, an American pizza chain, like an American pizza chain restaurant thing that's like moving here to Canada. Well, there's one in Toronto and there's one opening up in my city, Papa John's.
Oh yeah, he's bit of a jerk off, but actually I think they forced
but-
the guy
I mean,
out.
I guess it's a pretty big chain.
You
down
can take out the vest.
I just dropped that gold thing, and it's got a
Okay.
and then it's got a vault key, so we
guess-
should go to the vault like ASAP.
I guess it's a chain down there.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's a.
Yeah, it's a
a
pretty big
success-
chain.
Successful chain. Do you know what the funny thing is? And this, you're gonna get a kick out of this. There's a chain here in our city called Papa Joe's. So
That's funny.
it's gonna be funny.
I'm going to the vault.
I actually
Was that
like
knockoff Papa John's?
Well, I don't know. It was made. Maybe it was made like at the same time as Papa John's or something. It's been around for a long time, like 30 years.
I think Papa John's is quite old too, because I think a long time ago I read some kind of story about the chain. Maybe about the same time, but hell,
You
maybe
ran the
he saw
story?
Papa
Were you on the
John's.
newspaper?
Yeah, I ran a story in the fucking Phoenix Chronicle when I was in my previous life and something else.
Ah, cool.
Another turbocharger.
But yeah, it's opening for the first time, so I want to try that at Papa John's.
I think
Pizza.
I had one a
Never-
long time ago. I can't even remember how they are.
That's
all I
okay.
remember is it was decent, and they had a good.
They've got crust. Was the
They had
crust
garlic.
Yeah, the garlic sauce is good.
It had
No,
good.
I was looking for a heavy mag when I popped up here and wasn't there. So I was
Oh
like,
wait, here I have another one actually. I was gonna swap it out, but I'm gonna stick with double light at the moment.
Hey, you there?
Anybody need shotgun?
Nah, I'm good. Thank you. Zed, your mic is echoing a bit. Can you play with your wire? Yeah.
Is it?
Can you fiddle your diddle and
What are you asking me to do?
jerk off? Just trying to see if it'll jerk off, man. Why is that?
Why'd you make it sound all weird?
Why's it gotta be a problem? Yes, it's gone.
Is it good now? It's not even that my mic. It's that my mic is too loud.
Oh, turn that shit down.
When my sound goes up too high.
I have a similar issue with my if I turn on my headset, there's like a volume slider. If I turn that up too high, it causes an echo.
That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what just happened.
Oh, it'll echo.
Yeah.
On you. I mean, for
Yeah.
other people.
I remember it took a little bit to figure it out. Grim was hearing an echo.
Yeah, but that's exactly
what are you
it is.
doing?
It's just that if my
All right. Oh, is that double tap? All right, I can call it my thing. Maybe we can get some better armors. I'm gonna call it in back here. Get you guys some better shite.
but yeah, that's what it is. If my the slider on my thing's up too high.
I'm gonna drop a 1 to 2x.
Alright.
Because what it does is, I guess it's coming in so loud through my headphones itself that it echoes into the mic.
Yeah, it's weird. You'd think that it's. I mean, mine isn't like a super expensive thing, but it's I don't know. It was like $40 or something. No, that and that. It was like $40, and it's like a. I forget what it is. I've had a headset by this company before, and it's just. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, so it's not a super cheap set, so you'd think that it wouldn't have that issue. But it does.
Hey, Grim, the wall's coming in on you. I'm putting a zip line.
I'm in.
Yeah, that's me off in the distance.
This headset's not bad.
I
Like,
got turned around. Sorry. My bad. Sorry. I thought I was running
Yeah,
towards
I'm out.
Joe and into the circle again. I was looking at somebody else's triangle on the thing map.
Where are we flying to?
So yeah, we gotta go like. Well, we came from there.
okay.
So how about this?
Okay. Okie dokie. Alright. Checking this big building. I hear gunshots in the distance. Do we want to push them?
Sure. Going off
Sure.
in two directions. Back that way.
Okay.
We're slightly spread out.
Yeah, I'm coming to you guys. You pick a direction and let's go, because it's...
How about we go with these guys
Okay.
first? They're the ones that are gonna have to press to a dust running. in
Okay.
a circle.
Sounds good. I like it. Pro strats.
It does sound like pro strat. We got to back up a little bit, I think. Oh, this is the first circle, isn't it?
shit. Well, yeah, I don't want to get burned yet.
Yeah, I don't see anybody. They'll probably shoot your decoy first.
Should be running towards us. Yeah.
Might be
I
them
mean, we
popping
can
off
go
now.
right. Yeah, we should probably go left so we can get in the circle faster and
Yeah.
not fight while we're in the circle.
Yeah, I kind of figured after you said that, I was kind of thinking they'd probably like be there, running from the circle.
Right.
immediately.
I mean, as close as the circle was to us when we got in that little cut, I was expecting to see them.
Yeah.
There's only 3 other spots.
Whoa.
Get down.
What? I hear
Down, that's
shots.
not for you.
Oh, okay.
Everything fuzzy's not for you. Get down. Get down. Come on, get down, dog. You have a toy that you just chewed the top off of. Like, just happened.
But Fuzzy is live.
Yeah, there's like a plushy Frankenstein that was hanging from my ceiling fan for Halloween that I just took down today. So he
Yeah.
thinks that's his to chew.
The gunshots are
What is
around
it?
here, so.
He's like, come on, Dad. It's fluffy. It's nice in my mouth. I like to chew on it. Come on. Give
Oh, I
me a
just,
chance.
yeah, no.
Give me a chance. I promise I'm only gonna bite it 3 times. Twice, maybe.
That's all it's gonna take to rip the fucking head off of it. I
See
just
where
saw
it's coming
bullets
down.
over there where I
Exactly,
pinged.
right?
Oh, right back there, on the back side of that shit.
They're right out here. Shit. Oh my god.
Oh,
Other
man.
side. We're getting
Roy.
fucked up by 2 teams. I think.
Opie, shut up. This is
There's
big
a dude
business,
up
Opie.
there. The dude chasing you, Joe, around the container.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're definitely running.
Oh, no. Oh, that's the same dude. That's the same dude. Forget that. Oh, drone right above
Okay.
you. Oh, he might not have seen you. You should probably go back. Well, you do what? I'm sorry. You're a grown man. I was trying to crawl to you. There's a guy right in front of you up on top of the platform.
Okay.
He just shot me in. He just shot me in my box.
I don't see anybody up here.
It's never nice to get shot in the box.
Right in the box.
Oh shit, I was shooting at his fucking...
Oh. You can't hear that?
No, I was shooting at his drone. That's what I was aiming at. Yo! Lay down.
Do you have your sound effects turned down
No.
or something? Because sometimes you don't hear gunfire that seems pretty loud to me. And that time it seemed to me super obvious it was on the right side. But you
No,
couldn't
I
hear
could heard his drone. That's all I heard. That's what I was aiming for.
Damn.
So do you have your sound effects
Well-
turned
No.
down or something?
I wasn't expecting you. I couldn't even
No.
tell. I've had to turn on like the little, you know, some of these Turtle Beach ones. I'm sure a lot of headsets have this. Have like another audio mode, and if you just have it on the regular mode, it doesn't really make footsteps and stuff stand out. But then on this mode, like it's real hard to get to stop one of your audios from being too loud. And like
Yeah.
you kind of got it to hear footsteps and shit like that.
Oh, I also had the party turned down a little bit too. And one game. Maybe that's why I could hear better.
I have 3 different options for headset audio. It's on stereo uncompressed. There's also Windows Sonic for headphones and Dolby Atmos for headphones. I don't know if they would be better.
You got to pay for Dolby Atmos.
Oh.
My Turtle Beaches that are surround sound say to use the Windows Audio one.
Okay, so using HDMI.
Round sound, you might want to try.
Whoa, that's fucking crazy sounding. gets say,
But how much did I
yo,
say that pizza was?
16.50 or something.
No,
Yo,
that's what I thought.
that's
but
crazy sounding.
Well, the Dolby.
I
No, the
always order
windows.
a large pizza, and I feel like
Oh, the
it's
pizza. Okay.
usually like more. Like $22 with a tip, give them like a $2 or $3 tip. So maybe when I say large, they give me an extra large. Maybe this pizza will be smaller. I don't know, but yeah, it's definitely not the same as.
If it's
How much I
like you
think.
said, it's normally 16.50. Is that what you, or sorry, it's normally
No, that's what they
22
said
something?
tonight. So normally it's probably like 19 something or 18 something.
Get down.
Oh, weird.
Maybe they're giving the
Yeah,
Bear View
I get the
discount.
feeling.
Get the
Oh,
fuck
you know
down.
what? I usually get it from Chefs. That's what it is.
The
I get
bear.
the
God
cheesesteak
damn it,
from them.
dog.
That's what it is.
Oh man, I'm fucking stressed out already. This fucking dog needs to sit down, sit, stay. How hard do you think I have to squeeze his head before it pops?
I'll be right back.
Sometimes I want to. Sometimes I just like, I want to hug him so hard his head will pop off.
Yeah, man, that sounds like pretty rough. Trying to get him.
Yeah,
to
like
get
I
some
have
act right.
always, and I still do believe like a pet is a forever get down. It's a lifelong commitment. So like you rescue it, you buy it, you whatever. You're committed. Shut
You
up.
don't give up your
Right. It's like Opie, enough. It's like a child. You know what I mean? So it's you are committing to that dog for his life or that cat for their life. Get the fuck down. But I definitely understand the sentiments of taking a dog back.
Let's do it.
Like I'm not going to take him back. Get down. But I definitely see why people do. Because this motherfucker does it. He knows his commands, and that's what's super frustrating. He knows.
Where you want it?
Yeah, I'm going for the train station. He knows sit, stay, lay down, come, give. He knows all that stuff. He just chooses not to fucking listen. And that's what's really frustrating.
Yeah. On
It's
the
like
other
he's
Yeah.
hand-
stubborn.
On the other hand, Joe, have you ever seen The Good Son?
Yes, I have. A long time ago.
If the kid's a murderer, you might want to take him back.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I'm just kidding. No, I do see. I'm just playing around. I
He
see
hasn't
your point of
murdered
view.
anybody yet.
I mean, you know, the only dogs I've ever had, I wouldn't ever want to get rid of them, but they didn't do that much stuff that pissed me off either.
Yeah, he just like,
There's like a whole spot on the roof of that connecting building.
okay,
Shit, I hear them all around me and I can't
I'm
see them.
coming.
I'm running to Grim. Just
Bottom
maybe
floor
go
here,
chase.
right?
I'm coming.
It's okay. I'm behind you.
Just ran out that door there.
Alright, sounds like they're running around to the right. Or towards the west. Yeah, there's smoke over there now.
I'm just opening the door just to fuck with them.
Sounds like they're engaging somebody else.
Somebody zipped up, I think, maybe to the top.
I just did
This
a zip.
building. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're fighting another squad over there.
Okay. I'm with you. Do y'all want to bomb on these
They're
fools,
definitely above us.
or- Oh shit! Oh shit! To the north. What? Oh, it's behind us. Oh my god.
God damn it.
Oh my god. Get fucked 3
Yo, I was laying into them with the devotion. I was about to make a comment like, oh, you fucking with the wrong one. Because it felt like I was gonna. I did 90 damage to her. 90 damage to her.
And I did some damage. So I
Grim
did at
does
least
119
56 to her.
damage. Was that
Well, I
not
shot
all to the
robots
same?
first.
Okay.
I shot a robot on the roof, so I think 56 was to her. So.
Alright,
Man, that was a bitch. He shot me in the back. I thought I was getting shot from like a mile away outside.
yeah, I did 90 damage to
I don't know how we got
Pados
there.
Inc. To that Wraith. So, and Grim did some damage to her. I don't know if Zero did damage to her, but like, she should have
Oh, I didn't
fucking
do
died.
shit.
Alright, I'm already up. I'm gonna go to the bathroom, and I'm gonna either find out if I can kill Opie or put him in the other room. So I will be right back.
Just kill him
I'm about to.
bro.
Be right back.
Yeah, I'll be right back too. I gotta get money ready for the pizza. I'll be right.
All right.
Hey, yo, babe, can I kill this dog?
Gotta get in my special clothes for the pizza man. So Zed, when's your beta coming out?
3 days?
Okay. Not bad, not long.
Yeah. So Thursday. So it'll be on Thursday, right? So Tuesday is the 5th. Wednesday is the 6th, and the 7th is Thursday. So yeah, Thursday.
You.
Yeah, Grim, you would think that, like, that fucking guy, if he's worked at the pizza place for, like, 2 weeks, he would have had some other orders for Fairview, you know? But
Yeah, it's literally like 3 blocks away.
Yeah, but it's like a
Go down
small
to
little
the
street.
south of Ron and
You know what I mean? And it's full of like old people.
I can't.
all small
I
little
can't
streets.
say.
Terry Street's little, Morrow Street's little, and it's 3 blocks away. How the fuck do you not know a street that's 3 blocks away?
I mean, he might
You know what?
be
I
from
can't
like
say too
Jersey.
much.
When you're a delivery
Right, but he
driver-
might not be delivering now.
You were a delivery driver. Could you imagine not knowing where a place was 3 blocks away from any of the
Yeah, but I've only answered the phones at one place that I worked. I mean, delivery drivers. He might not be. He
Oh,
might not be
wow.
a delivery driver. The guy that took the order might just. He might be some dude who lives in Jersey. Yeah, man.
are you guys pretty close to Jersey
Not far from it. Yeah.
and
No.
Philly there?
I mean,
didn't really-
kind of. There's like a bridge. It's a little ways away. Technically,
Yeah, but I mean, you can be in Jersey in 10 minutes from his house, or less.
yeah. Yeah, it's not.
What
far.
part of?
Palmyra is where the Tacony Bridge cuts over. A little bit longer. You can be
Okay.
in like Burlington. Like Burlington's. If I were to take the bridge closer to me, I'd end up in Burlington.
Okay.
So.
See, I don't know too much about that. Down there, I've been in like, I've been in
Yo, you.
places all around,
Oh man. Ooh. I thought he was just tearing up my fucking slipper. He just was chewing up the Frankenstein on top of my slipper. Oh.
You chewing slippers, Ed? Frankenstein.
Yeah, Zed's a slipper chewer.
Frankenstein chewing son
but
of
man,
a gun.
slippers are so fun to chew on, man. Like you don't even
They-
know. Don't.
They
knock
got
it
the
till you
delicious
try
taste of feet.
it. Gotta love that toe jam.
Yeah, man. Toe jam and Earl.
100 energy ammo right here.
I love when it squishes in between my teeth.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
Nice. Oh, I could use that.
Like these bitches are wet.
Yeah, we can do that.
You in a fight?
I think.
Oh, okay.
I can do that.
hear
You don't
clearly.
want to come help?
Yeah, go for it, Grim.
Alright, I'll go for it. You have what? I have 2 throwables. So. Throwables definitely help when you're taking on multiple people.
Yeah.
Even if you don't hit him, it makes him scatter. Oh, damn, I only have 28 bullets. That could be bad.
There's 100 energy ammo over here. What bullets do you need?
Is there? I had no idea there was there. Oh, heavy, light.
Alright, I can drop you some.
Yeah, that's it. And a bag. I don't have a fucking bag yet, so I can't pick anything else up. The
I
syringes
was
up
just
here.
dropping light and heavy for you.
Anything. Oh, thank you.
You get this blue shield 0. It's got all colored up.
Coming.
And we can all be the color brigade.
Alright,
Colors.
you gotta go fight these
Colors.
bitches.
Colors,
Yeah.
colors.
These guys probably gonna be here really soon.
This is back when rap only had to have like one word. for most of the
I
song.
mean, basically only has one word
Or the
for
hook.
most. Yeah,
Like that.
it's called
Yeah, trap.
mumble
you know,
rap.
shit. Yeah.
So Joe, you want to get a kick out of something?
Sure, I like kicking shit.
I
Oh,
I,
dude,
I, act-
dude
I,
going
I
down
actually
with the
sat down.
Okay.
I actually sat and fucking played with.
I'm
I
hearing
actually sat and
somebody.
played a game with Phantom for
Oh,
like
back
4
there,
hours.
somebody.
Oh, nice. I didn't know you even played games anymore.
Yeah. That's what I said to him.
I'm coming, Grim.
I said, oh, you're still. I said, well, it's nice to know that you still know how to play a video game or whatever. I was like, and then I was like, yeah, it's nice to know that you still know how to play a video game. He's like, yeah.
Oh,
He's
we're
like,
getting sniped
oh,
from,
Oh, I just hit him with the arc star back there?
And then he's-
Oh, dude, on the construction site right here.
I got
I
got
broke
by
his
the
shield.
So he's like, so I was like, yeah, it's nice to know that you still know how to play a video game. I was like,
Somebody
and
right
then
there.
Where,
Yeah, he's on
and
the
then
where'd
he
he
ends
go?
up
I
dying.
can't find him.
He ends
Fuck.
up dying like 2 minutes.
You're chasing him
He ends
around.
up dying like 2 minutes later, and I was like, yeah, and it's nice to know you still slept in all the game.
He's pushing up.
Yo, I cannot
Fuck you.
fucking. Oh, there's somebody behind me.
Exactly.
Fuck. Fuck! Oh my god, I was running around a fucking shipping container.
He's got you.
Fucking
I gotta go.
ever.
I'll be back in a little bit.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh my god. So fucking annoying, man. Like every direction I ran, he was the wrong fucking
yeah,
way.
you were 3 seconds behind him or something. I don't know where he went after he ran around downstairs there.
So is he eating his pizza or is he coming back? What's he doing? It's all,
I think he was saying he was. I assumed he was.
that's
going
what I
to eat
thought. But like, he's still here.
it. Yeah, I think he just forgot. I guess we gotta leave. Oh, he didn't forget. Oh yeah, he did. Okay. When you left,
Yeah.
I thought you
No,
left.
fuck that. I'm out like trap, bro.
I put a big ass, like a 1.5 liter bottle of wine in my freezer and forgot about it. And that shit like pushed the cork out through the fucking little foil wrapping on top.
Okay.
And like, I'm wondering
it
if I'm
super
drinking
frozen?
like ultra strong. Yeah, it was pretty frozen. It had a little liquid left in it, but like, I think I might be drinking super strong wine right now because it's like the part that unfroze first.
Is it thawed now?
Part of it is.
Well, enough of it was thawed to pour out a glass of wine or whatever, you know.
Man,
Two
I didn't
glasses.
know you drank wine.
I don't usually. I usually just drink beer, but I don't like wine as much, so I figured maybe I would drink less.
I force myself to do stuff I don't like because I
of it,
figure
you
I'll do
know.
less of it.
Yeah.
It's like I like getting fucked up, but I don't really like meth. So I figured I'll just smoke some meth. So maybe I'll do less of it.
Yeah. Blue shit only.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's wrong with a little bit of meth smoke every
No.
once in a while, you know?
Nope.
Meth and meth accessories.
Mhm. It's all about the
Your life
mathematics.
could be worse. The mathematics, yes. Exactly.
Oh shit.
This guy's walking like he's got a pickle in his arms.
I mean, is that not where you keep your pickles?
Let's try this
Sky.
sky. Good.
Not normally.
It gives them extra flavor.
I guess it depends. I guess it depends on the time of day as to whether or not I'm gonna have a pickle in my house.
Damn, you change your ass pickle situation by the hour? Mine's usually
well,
like
of
day by
course.
day.
Well, no. Mine's like you know every couple hours. It's like quarterly throughout the day.
That makes sense.
And if I have a lot of shit and if I have a lot of things to do, like I'm really busy, then like I take a frequent stop. I pull the pickle out. I take a bite out of it. I put it back up there.
Oh
you know?
yeah. You just gotta keep it. It helps keep your bowels moving. You know what I mean? Sometimes,
Well, exactly.
I mean, sometimes it's just you need a little extra bite to your salad.
Yeah. Or you know sometimes it's just a little uncomfortable, so you have to take that small bite out of it just to get it sitting right again.
Yeah, yeah.
There's dudes fighting over in this
Alright, I gotta
area.
triple take.
Seriously, these guys are fucked up talking about sticking pickles in their ass.
I mean, it's all about the content, man. I gotta do what the viewers want, and they have spoken, and they want pickles in the ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, here's someone zipping.
Yeah.
Oh, here,
they're right
there's a helmet
inside.
there.
Oh, thanks. Thought they were inside. Yep,
Nice.
got it.
Does he have a vest I can wear? Steel.
There's a guy coming in this door. We came in.
Okay. Spitfire here.
That's an
Well,
alligator. Holy fuck.
Third dude coming in the door, I think.
Okay, yep. Nice.
Suck it. Rookies.
For realsies.
Dude, that was dope. I
Yeah.
wish every squad would come in one at a time.
Alright, I'm gonna get rid of this sniper thing I had. Yeah, I'll take the heavy ammo. I'm putting a Phoenix kit in there.
One in
Phoenix
there?
kit.
Alrighty.
Yo!
Oh,
Yeah, I'm just gonna
Do you
play
need
for
a
bit. Let me
show?
Okay, yeah, we didn't know if you were coming back or not, because it sounded like you were just gonna go eat
Yeah,
your
I thought you
pizza.
were gonna eat.
Well, I was just gonna eat, yeah, but then it was too hot. But yo, this fucking pizza
Somebody's
place makes me
zipping-
not ever want to fucking order from there again, dude.
Oh, is it
So-
the
Did
dude
they, did they bring a bear with
So I
them
look out.
to make it truly a bear
Yeah, they're
view?
like, is this bear view? Nah. But no, so, you know, I have the blinds open so I could see, like, if a car pulls up, so I see the car there. That's when I noticed it, I looked out, it was already there. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta go. And, you know, I have the front door and the side door, so I don't know what door
Right.
is that. So I go out on the porch without a jacket or shoes on, and the car's still there. The dude's not out of the car. So I'm just fucking waving at him, standing there, waving money. There's money in my hand. And I start waving the fucking money at him for like 4 minutes. He's not fucking coming.
What
then
the
I
fuck?
then I notice my phone's ringing in the fucking house. I'm like, you serious, bro? You're gonna make me go into the fucking house? Like, you don't think I'm the guy waving the fucking money on the porch at you. You're parked out front of my fucking house, dude. Like, oh my god. Oh.
Wow. That's fucking.
Why would he call though? Like
Oh
I've
my God,
never.
I was so angry. I was so angry. And then when he called, before he even said anything, I'm like, yeah, I'm the guy on the fucking porch. I didn't say fucking. I'm like, I'm the guy on the porch waving at you with the money in his hand. Like, that's me. I'm inside now. I have to go get my phone. I'll be right back out. And he's like, oh, sorry, we have to call first every time. I'm like, get the fuck out of here, bro. Like, that,
We got somebody
fucking just
pushing
lying
his-
now, dude. Like, oh my god, it made me way angrier than it should have, but it was just so stupid. Like, it's not even like the houses are close together. You're out front of my house where GPS took me. I'm waving fucking
I got one of them down from the living room.
like, oh my
Third
god.
dude's coming across, I think.
Oh, he's here. Broke his shield. It's a caustic. Get down, Opie. God, Opie, get off me.
One thing I'm really glad about is my old apartment. I used to live in a like a this weird, like, I guess you could say, like, three house like multi-unit house kind
Oh,
of
shit, the wall's here.
and my apartment was in the my apartment was in the back of the, like, you had to walk to the back of the house, and it was like kind of like in the basement kind of thing. So like the only way to access it is go all the way down like a path on the right side of the house, go down, open up a gate into the backyard, go around, go into the backyard, right? So it was so annoying ordering pizza because I'd have to order it to the house and be like, yeah, it's apartment 3, but like you're not gonna see apartment 3 when you get there. So like I had to come out, and there's so many times like people would just leave my pizza behind. Like they'd come knock on the apartment 1 door, and they'd be like, yeah, we didn't order a pizza. So then the pizza man, rather than calling me, would just fucking leave.
What? That's some bullshit.
And they would leave the pizza there for free?
No, they would take the pizza.
Yeah, I
back.
thought you said leave it behind.
No, they would just leave. I was like,
Yeah, I wouldn't see
it pissed me off. Oh, if they
That's
they left
crazy.
the pizza
Like
there for free,
all
though.
the, like I would put so much work into like finding fucking houses, especially like an apartment complex and stuff. Like walk around for fucking like 15 fucking minutes, like looking for houses. I put so much work into that shit. Like it's absurd that people wouldn't.
But it wasn't even that it was an apartment complex. It would be like, imagine just going to like a normal like run of the mill like house, right? So like normal like single home, but it's been converted into 4 apartments. So like you see like 1626 you know, Elmdale Drive, right? You know, that's just a random number, but yeah, like 1626 Elmdale Drive, apartment, like, and like the thing says apartment 3, right? So then you get to the house and you see 1626 Elmdale Drive, and then you're like, and it looks like just one big house. So then you're like, it might be a little confusing. You might be like, oh shit, this looks like one house, but they gave me an apartment number, like. All right, like let's look around. Like I did pizza delivery too, and I did furniture delivery as well. Like, you know, so you'd see that, and you'd be like, all right, like let's like knock and see if this is the multi-unit, or like did they give me the wrong address? What's up, right?
In other words, don't be a fucking
Yeah,
dumbass.
like
Like,
put a little bit of effort into it.
You see that, you're like, well, some people, like, not everybody has.
yeah, some
like,
people
the-
are dumbasses.
Well, like it's not an uncommon thing anymore to have like a house that's, you know, divided into, you know, maybe 6
Yeah.
units, or, you know, like
Yeah, right. Especially a big.
like you see a house and like I'm sure it happens, like, you know, in where
In a
each one of
town
you
near
live, like Yeah.
I'm gonna call my special in
you know,
right here.
There's like a house where. There's a house where
I hear
somebody's like
Oh,
decided
that's you,
that
Joe. Never mind.
they're gonna turn like turn
Yeah, I
that
got one
house
right
into
beside
2
me like
units.
that.
Exactly, right? So, and but like people would just be stupid and be like, oh well, you know.
But yeah.
It's like they can't. Some people can't use their heads for anything other than a hat rack.
Dude, when I worked at Amazon as a temp for like a week because they didn't pay me what they
Oh,
said
shit.
they would. But they give you a little test at the temp place. Oh, I got a fight. Never mind. Hold on.
Good shooting. That's what I was gonna do. Opie, get the fuck off my chair.
Speaking of Amazon, I actually just applied to work at Amazon
Yeah,
at the Amazon warehouse
it's,
here, fulfillment center. Sorry, I think it's
I
called.
hear it's a pain in the ass. I don't really know, but
It's a super.
Working
It depends on what you're doing, I'm sure, but it is.
forklift driver.
Oh well, now that's not as bad. Okay, if you're one of the people that doesn't get to drive, well, forklift is totally different. Okay, if you're one of the pickers, you're going to be walking like
Yeah,
10
it's
or
not
20
as-
miles a day on concrete.
oh,
it's
there's a
bitch,
bunch of boxes
But
over
yeah,
there.
forklift driver, that's different.
There's purples. There's gold.
It's a forklift driver position for. Forklift driver position. It's a part-time position. It's a part-time position.
may not
but
be
I
bad.
applied for it. I applied for it, but it's a part-time position. But it's $20 an hour. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's there you go.
but like, I made more than that when I was doing construction. But like, hey,
Yeah,
like
but you're
it's
sitting
not
down.
as I'm off work. Like I could technically go back to that company, but the problem is that company was really hard on me mentally, and that's
Yeah,
and which is what led towards my nervous breakdown. You know what I mean? That's why I'm off work, by the way. In case you wondered, I had a nervous breakdown. But but I was like, okay, cool. So like they're like, yeah, I saw this ad. That my friends
we gotta
working
move, guys.
Okay.
my friend's working as a health and safety officer or something like that, for Amazon or whatever. And he's like, yeah, they're looking for people to fill the job, and I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, yeah, it's like part-time position. It's a part-time position that at $20 an hour plus like benefits and stuff like that. So I was like, pretty cool. So
Yeah, dude. I mean, 20. Yeah, that sounds like a good job, honestly. I mean, and you're not having to walk for miles, and I mean, you're on a forklift.
Or
Just
somebody's on our
Just
teammate. I
don't do
think.
the shit where you. Okay.
I could be wrong.
see what
Yeah,
I was doing before,
let the circle burn them a little while we're.
I have years of equipment like equipment operating experience. Like what I was doing before
Nice.
was what I was doing just before I had a nervous breakdown. I was working in heavy machinery. I was working like for a company called ASL Construction, doing heavy machinery operator, like a excavator and stuff. And then before that, I was building houses.
Okay, I see him zipping all the way across there.
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna throw us a zip line.
Oh, come on, teammate. Why are
I don't
you
know how far I
fucking?
can go.
You're shooting a fucking flat line, 2,000 meters.
I'm taking.
Yeah,
the
I'm with
zip.
you.
I'm taking the zip. Yeah, kid's a moron. Some kind of
Yeah,
bow
like, what
rod,
the fuck?
boy. Oh shit.
Yeah, maybe you hit a couple bullets out of your fucking fully automatic fucking firing. But all you do is give away our fucking position.
Yeah, kid's not too bright.
There's a blue knockdown shield. I don't know if you need that or...
Apparently I got something that, no, I got a blue one already, thank you.
Alright, so now they're fucking popping grenades at us because douchebag.
Maybe they'll get at each other here. I don't know. I don't know if we should be here or not. It was just the first building I ran
Probably
toward.
not, but I mean, we probably, if we could have stayed where we were, probably would have been the best bet. But we couldn't because he started giving up position away.
But we could, yeah. Well, I mean, we weren't in the circle either. I don't know.
Yeah, we might not have been.
You want to get to the bigger building?
You sure, whatever. Shoot at me still.
I don't know what to do.
I only have a 2x, so it's not that.
Oh, he's a caustic. Maybe we should stay in here. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know what to do.
Well, our caustic left.
Yeah,
so.
I figured I was. I
No,
figured I
I'll
was
do
gonna
that.
try to do some work.
All right.
Try to get into work slowly, working again slowly. So I applied to like a couple of different jobs.
Hey, hold on just a sec, Zed. Sorry, I'm
What do you?
trying to survive the
What do
game.
you? What do you need?
You want to go where the? Oh no, he just got fucked up. Let's see if he'll crawl inside.
I want to go
Hit that kid for 90.
where everybody knows.
Their lasers
me.
trying to laser rifle us.
No colors allowed. Okay. Well then.
Where is that third fucking squad at? That
Right here.
is not getting
They're
in
on the steps.
this? Shit. Oh, inside here. Too.
Fuck, we're so fucking pinched.
Fuck, I can't hit anything. I got two of them down, one alive here, Joe.
Fuck, man.
Oh, so close. So
Ugh.
close.
God damn. That's 100% our teammates' fault for starting that.
Oh yeah, what a fucking dumbass. Oh, you damage
Damn. Nice fucking shooting.
Thank you. Had that R99, baby. I was doing some good
What's
scout
your-
shooting too, but man,
what-
that R99
what's the-
beat some damage.
What's the damage
1434.
that you got?
1434. I think I had 1385 as my previous.
That's good
Shit.
shit.
Nice.
Yes. So what were you saying, Zed? Starting a new job?
Oh, so I figured I was like gonna just I figured I'd try just getting back into working, like, you know, slowly. Like, I was talking to my therapist or whatever, and they were saying like it might be good to like do like a little bit, not thrust myself into too much, but see if I can handle a little bit of like working a little bit again. So I'm gonna so I applied to Amazon. I applied to the Amazon place. I applied to a couple of different other warehouses and everything as like forklift driver operator. There's one where it's working for the cat store. because of my equipment operator like experience and stuff, the cat store like where you buy the big heavy equipment or whatever. And
Oh, yeah.
I applied there as basically somebody. It's a on-site trainer, I think it is. So basically, it's like when somebody buys a machine from Cat, and I'll deliver it with I'll deliver it and then I guess bring the new machine to whoever, and then be like, yeah, so this is how this works.
Nice.
Oh,
If-
like drive
if
it
I'm
to 'em
correct.
on the truck and
Yeah, exactly. If I'm correct, because like I've seen people that do that before, so I think that's the job position. I'd have to look at the thing, but that's pretty much the duties it seemed to say in the ad. So
that might be pretty cool.
yeah,
I mean, it's like
I just wanna.
it's like delivering Transformers or something, kinda.
Exactly. But like, yeah, so like delivering like new bulldozers and stuff like that to people, to companies or whatever, which is cool with me.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good job.
They're all in like the they're all in like the $20 range. So there's one job that I want more than the rest, and because it pays a lot more. But I don't know, like I'm kind of nervous of that, and it's like I was only looking for part-time positions. I didn't want any full-time work, so it was one that's like that was coming and I couldn't talk. It's like it's like 2 days a week or something like that, and it's basically it's like two days a week, 12-hour days.
That's rough.
Working, yeah.
But
it's
5 days
but
off
it's
a week. I mean, that ain't
Yeah.
bad.
so it's
you know,
only
12-hour days
20,
are rough.
but it's only it's 24 hours. See, it's 24 hours a week, which is whatever, which I don't mind, but it's $30 an hour.
Yeah, that'd be pretty dope.
Yeah.
What's it?
It's doing what's it called? Night. It's like a nighttime thing. It's like from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And it's basically unloading car parts off of trucks into a manufacturer, like a factory.
Okay.
It's not bad.
With a
And
like
it's-
forklift stuff?
With forklifts, yeah.
I think I'd rather do that than the Amazon thing. I mean, that's
Yeah.
me. you
But
know?
but the
you said so,
Amazon
too.
thing is the Amazon. But the thing is it's two days a week, 12 hours a day, and it's like they're 2 consecutive days, and I
yeah,
like,
that is rough.
they might be $30 an hour, but like it's Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. It's nice to have a weekend off, but do you often? Well, you know you. I would do what I wanted to do there.
Sorry, what do you mean?
I was just saying. Yeah, you're the one that knows best what you need. You know, out of
Well, like I said,
those
it's the one that
choices.
I'm probably the most interested in getting, but like, cause I do it. I'm not against doing it. It's just that's just
Yeah,
lot.
12-hour days is.
it'd be sacrifice.
Some-
It'd be 12-hour days, and it's sacrifice. It's sacrificing my weekends, right?
I used to work at a. Oh, go ahead.
And it's not like it's not like it's weekend days either. It's weekend nights. It's 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Right?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of a bitch.
So I'm working overnight on. So I'm working overnight Saturday, like so all Saturday night, and then Sunday night over to Monday morning.
Yeah, and then your whole fucking sleep schedule is completely fucked for the whole week. Because I mean, what can you do? Like, wake up normal times Monday through Friday, and then do a 12-hour shift Saturday night.
Yeah, no. The 12.
That sounds like it'd be a good job for a night owl.
Yeah. But
Well, somebody's
I'm
attacking.
coming. Yeah, the 12-hour shifts is just it's kills it. I mean, it's just so shitty. Like 8-hour shifts suck. I mean, counting the fucking time till that's over. Like,
I don't know where this fucking guy. He must have killed him.
I don't know.
Maybe, or he's chasing him. Yep. Saw him down
Yeah,
there somewhere.
Somebody just flew in behind us.
He said,
Fuck, so we gotta be careful. We're between at least 2 people.
the 8-hour shift. The 8-hour shift would be,
Yeah,
is enough.
maybe that kid's baiting us.
It just like it just kinda-
burning somebody?
Just be a little.
Broke somebody's shield.
That kid's
But,
wasting
like-
me to death.
One down.
Possibly one of my-
Still somebody over here.
I'm dead.
I was talking to one of my friends about it, and he's like that would be
Whoa, Joe!
Like,
way to go.
There we go, buddy. Oh, somebody's here. Fuck, man. I didn't stop because you were almost up. Fuck, man, that sucks so bad.
Yeah, I've done that same shit. No, you did great though. I mean, you put down 2 of them or whatever. 2 or 3.
I got all 3 kills because you guys were down when I killed the last one, I think. I downed 2 of them. I downed
don't
one,
know what-
and then I killed the third one, but because I think our teammate downed the second one, and he was a box when I killed the third one. It gave me credit for all 3.
I don't know how I even died, man. I wish it must have been like a 301 with a scope, because that kid from far away, dude, like 100 meters or more away, put me down in a second from about 100, and it was auto. And I'm like, what the fuck even hit me? I don't even know. Maybe it was a hemlock and he got a headshot. It was ridiculous.
Right.
But you kicked their ass.
Yeah, that was pretty hectic.
That's what we call some ass kickery.
Yes, kickery.
Yeah, man, I'd tell you, if it was a day shift, dude, I would be like, don't even question it. Just do the fucking 12-hour weekends. But for a night,
Well,
7 to 7, fuck that.
Yes.
and like one of my friends was like, dude, like you'd be, especially like where it is, right? So he's like, dude, you'd be off at 7. He's like, it's on the other. He's like, it's on the other side of town. He's like, so that's gonna take you at least an hour and a half travel time. So he's like, you're looking at like 14, 15 hours of a day out of your house. You know.
Yeah,
he's
you
like,
just
you're
have to
gonna-
come home and go to sleep.
Exactly. He's like, and you're gonna. He's like, so you're like doing absolutely anything on the weekends is a complete wipe.
Yeah, and I mean, you just couldn't do anything during the week.
Yeah, it's tough to switch
I mean,
between
you couldn't
those.
change your sleep schedule by
Yeah,
hours.
it's tough to switch your schedule around like that. Watch out, Opie. Because
Well, like if
come on, dog.
okay,
Yeah, I was just
go
saying,
ahead.
Kim's mom, she works overnight. I think she does 4 10-hour shifts. She's a nurse, so the on her days off, she has to like, she'll come home on her last day, and then she has to stay up till like whatever, like as late as she can, basically, stay up so she can go to sleep and then start sleeping at night and be up during the day with like the family and stuff. So it's like, it's really tough on her. So she's counting down like the days till she retires.
I couldn't even do that. Yeah, it just
Yeah, my mom was a nurse, did the same kind of thing.
that just wouldn't happen with me. I mean, unless I had to.
Right. Yeah, I would just stay on that schedule.
Except my mom had some my mom never had like, my mom did some overnight shifts, but her schedule was
Kid right here with a shield, bro.
ridiculous. I remember as a little kid, like, the ridiculousness of my mom's shifts. My mom did like 10-hour shifts, the same kind of thing, right? But
Oh yeah. Come over here. And then you can loot that box and get a gun and shit.
like, I ended up spending the majority of like after my father died and everything, I ended up spending the majority of my time in the hospital with my mom at work. Get up
Yeah.
here, come on. My mom were, her shifts were 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. right? So, it was like I get off work and I get off school and I come to the hospital and spend the whole day at the whole night at the hospital, and then
Oh shit, people love me.
go home and I go to sleep.
At least
right?
two, yeah. Yeah, that's tough. It's just I don't know, that's one thing, like growing up, Kim didn't want like shift work. She wanted a 9 to 5. That's why like her 2 sisters went to school to be nurses like their mom, but she went to school to be an accountant because she wanted like a 9 to 5 job.
Go for that
Oh,
blue
thank
shield.
you, buddy.
No, she does work like past. She does work past 5 quite frequently, doesn't she?
Yeah, but she also doesn't go in at 9 either. She goes in kind of whenever she wants.
I'm getting this choke.
Okay. Because she's been there so long, and she's like, one of the partners like loves her.
Somebody's bringing somebody back.
Okay. One of the partners
She's one of
like
the
probably not
favorites,
worth it.
so she can kind of do whatever she wants. And she gets all her shit done all the time. She doesn't complain. Like, yeah. So like, it started when her grandpa was sick. She was allowed to start coming. Like, she would come in late because like she'd have to help her mom with stuff in the morning, getting like her grandpa when he was like home on like hospice care, get him kind of taken care of, and get like their grandma, because they were living at their house, get their grandma and grandpa taken care of in the morning. So she was allowed to come in like whenever really, but like around 10 o'clock ish. And then that just, after her grandparents passed, that just never changed. She just comes in when she wants. But then she also stays as late as she needs to, and I mean, she gives the company a lot of time. She doesn't ever try to get over on them.
Yeah. Well, cause like I remember a couple of times you'd be like, yeah, Kim's at work, and I'd be like, holy crap, it's like
Yeah, it's like 9 o'clock at night.
9 o'clock at night, and I'd be like, oh, what? And you're like, yeah, she's just staying late. I'd be like, oh, okay. It's
I don't have a whole lot of bullets.
I don't know whether to run through Skyhook or go right to.
Whatever.
No.
Pick a direction to run, or a teammate will pick a direction. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, he seems like an okay player.
Jubra.
what's wrong?
Oh shit! Somebody's.
He's a medium dick player.
So okay. So I guess out of the thing that he shot down, there was a purple bag that dropped, or maybe you shot down. I don't know.
I didn't shoot it. Yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
he
take
has
it.
a white bag, and you have a no bag, and I didn't have a bag either. But like when I saw it, I'm like, what? Like everybody's geared enough that they're leaving a purple bag, and then I pick it up and look, and
Oh, yeah,
it's
right.
not the case at all.
I was running back for something else after he shot it down.
Flava Flav?
I got a total of 40 or 64 light bullets total, and total of 49 energy bullets. Yo, that's not.
He just picked up some
fucking
light
toy.
ones I was about to mark.
Okay. Actually, I think I'm gonna drop this.
Blue knockdown shield.
Okay.
Oh, I was about to freak on my dog. I heard chewing and I was like, oh god, what is she chewing on this time? And then when I stood up, looked at her, she like drops her bone, looks at me like, I'm just chewing this.
This is. I'm supposed to chew this. Hey, Brazil.
Yeah, you gave me this. You said I'm allowed to chew this. I'm chewing this. Let me.
Yeah, I'm so used to yelling at Opie. I just like I hear something. I'm immediately like, "Yo, what are you doing?" I need to look over. Oh, actually, right now he's got my fucking
Yeah.
slipper. You fucking kidding me?
So he's actually doing something.
Yeah, I was just like
Yeah.
saying that as an example, and I turn and look at him, and he's like chewing something. And I'm like, "Oh, it's probably this exact thing. He's probably chewing his bone." No, he's got my fucking.
Oh, a care package right ahead of us.
Okay. Oh, you need a body shield level 2.
I don't know. Okay, I'm not going to hit it because he just marked an enemy.
Okay, I'm coming. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, give me a Kraber.
Hit him for 22.
Are they grenading at me? They're mad that I got the Kraber. I'm healing up and I'm gonna Kraber the shit out of them.
Fuck.
No, they're pushing me. Fuck. God damn it.
Yeah, they backed out.
Fuck, man.
Just got scanned.
They were mad I got that Kraber. They fucked me up for it.
I just got fucked up.
Fuck me up for it.
Come in, kid. Get some.
Come on, Opie, give it to me. Give.
Okay.
Give.
Hey, excuse me, Siren. That's not your bone though. Yeah. You got the bone, but you're laying right by the dresser's leg, and yeah, that's not the bone. That's the dresser. Don't chew on that. Hey,
Oh, god damn it.
don't
That's the
chew
same.
on the
Yeah, same chick that got me. Got me the same way with that peacekeeper. Ay ay ay.
The fuck is Grim? How much pizza that man eat?
47 slices.
That's hilarious that he's talking
Is
about
he
waving
eating
the
it?
money on the porch and the fucking
Yeah,
guy.
like
Is he eating it the speed of
he
smoke?
does that. Well, he's probably eating pizza. Then he's probably smoking a cigarette. Then he's probably like making a tobacco company. Then producing cigarettes. Then smoking one of them.
It's fun.
And he never
creating
smokes
his own.
until he's either had sex or jacked off. So
Yeah,
that's
so
another
he's
10
yeah,
minutes.
he's eating pizza and jerking off, starting a tobacco company, making cigarettes, smoking them, and then maybe he'll be on.
Shit.
Taking a shower.
Oh shit, man.
Rubbing grease on his
I was
chest.
just thinking a buffalo chicken pizza. A
Yo,
buffalo chicken
y'all are
pizza,
killing me, man. I want
ranch
pizza
dressing.
so bad, bro.
Hell yeah, man. Homemade ranch dressing. I mean,
I
might as
mean,
well.
I don't know how to make homemade ranch. Dude, I don't have any like ranches just sitting around to
Oh, you
like
just
grind
get-
up.
Right.
Yo, there he is.
Oh, there he is. Fuck. We'll just join him instead of enduring a game with Assassin.
Yeah.
Did you
Shoot us an invite when you get in the lobby.
create your own cigarette company?
Real,
Yeah.
why don't you send us an invite when you?
Right.
Hopefully it's successful.
Yeah.
But yeah, Joe,
hope
dude,
so.
the best ranch dressing you ever had in your life is, well, probably just about as good as you can get anyway. Is if you go get Hidden Valley Ranch dressing seasoning packets,
Oh, okay.
and you like make it with sour cream, mayo, and milk. The Hidden Valley seasoning, dude. Oh, it's fucking delicious. Hidden Valley bottled ranch compared to making it at home with that stuff tastes like diarrhea. Any other ranch dressing is completely inferior.
So it's like a Hidden Valley Ranch DIY kit.
It's just a packet.
Is
of
that what it
seasoning.
tells you to make it with?
It's Hidden Valley
sour
Ranch
It may say
dressing
just
mix.
Mayo and...
like you can get either regular or buttermilk, and the buttermilk says make it with buttermilk, but you don't have to. It doesn't fucking matter. But like,
So you just follow the exact
but
directions and it tastes much better?
you don't. I don't follow. I think it says mayo and milk, but I use sour cream, mayo, and milk, which to me makes it better. I'd use like, I don't know, 2/3 sour cream, 1/3 mayo, and then just enough milk to make it whatever consistency you want. But the shit's fucking delicious.
Wait, I have one in my cupboard.
Have you ever just added sour cream to like
Yeah, it's great, dude.
Hidden Valley Ranch, like the store-bought bottle?
No, that'd be interesting, but it's not the same. It's not the same at all. Like when the bottled version, I think it's got like, I don't know, maybe some
Even if you
preservatives or
make-
something.
Did you say it's
just
got
not the same.
dirt in
Even
it?
if you make it the way that the thing, even if you make that mix the same way as like the instructions say, it still doesn't taste like the bottled Hidden Valley Ranch.
No, right. And I'm sure it would be great with just mayo too, but I just think the sour cream really adds a lot to it. What were you saying, Joe?
You said something's in the stuff, and it sounded like you said, yeah, no, it's like they put dirt in it, in the store-bought stuff. Preservative, okay.
Preservatives.
So I'm like, did you say they put dirt in it? And then everybody's just like, fuck you, Joe, we're gonna talk about other shit. And I was like, alright, cool, that's cool.
Yeah, it is dirty, man.
You know, dirt dressing.
I mean,
It says
Yeah.
it says use sour cream. 'Cause I just put
Oh, it does say use sour
Out of
cream?
my thing, it doesn't say any mayo though. It doesn't give you.
Oh, the
Doesn't-
version I saw says mayo, not sour cream. I think that's weird.
Oh, okay. Well, this one says buttermilk.
I
and
might
sour
be
cream.
wrong. Maybe I got the shit confused. I don't know.
got
It's
the
delicious,
shit
dude. It's fucking great.
twisted. Opie, you're like right in the middle of the fucking floor. I need to like put my chair there, bud. Come on, move.
Hey, yo, so another Facebook listening event today, right? So my mom got her thing from Amazon today, and she's telling me about it as she's opening it. It's like, yeah, I got this new heavy-duty mixer, and it's heavier duty than all the other
Then all
ones.
the other duties that could be heavy.
Yeah, and I help her take it out of the box, whatever.
And it gives you ads for
And,
boxes.
Just now when I'm on the phone, there's ads for big heavy-duty mixers from Walmart that look almost exactly alike as the one that we
So
have.
they're also
Dude,
they
are
got
you
cameras in your
saying because
house.
you were talking about-
How do they know what it looks like?
What?
How did?
I
Are
mean,
you saying because you were talking about
maybe
it,
all the
your phone picked
heavy-duty
it up
ones
and then started
look the
showing you
same,
ads?
and it might just be a coincidence that it's the same color, but why else would a heavy-duty mixer pop up on my shit, right?
You're talking about
Yeah,
because you were
man.
talking about it.
Yeah.
Right, Grim?
Exactly, yeah.
I've
that
talked
shit's been
about shit
happening
and then
very
seen
often.
ads for it. Yeah, I've seen ads for shit after I've talked about it, and I was like, I think that was because I was talking about it, but at the same time, maybe I
Some
searched
people
for this thing like a couple of months
don't
ago.
believe me.
No, I mean, I definitely believe it's easily possible, and I think I believe it happens. But like, because that's happened to me before. But then I was like, oh wait a minute. When I come to really think
You
about it, I
might have
might have
searched
searched
it,
for
I'm
this
sure.
shit a couple of months ago. But
But yeah, I
dude, I
definitely
mean, it would
didn't
be
search for no
super
fucking
easy.
heavy-duty mixer. You know,
Yeah.
definitely didn't.
And I mean, you know that like Alexa and Google Assistant and stuff, you can set it to be voice activated anyway, and it listens for OK Google or whatever. So like,
Yeah.
what, they can't be just, you know, monitoring your shit anyway, and when it matches a product they sell, they show you an ad for it.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's necessarily Facebook. It could be Google. Yeah, I mean, like, there's so many Google apps on your phone.
So you're
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot.
and that's also
so
that's how like Google ads work and stuff. I mean, like, it's stuff that you search for that goes to. So I mean, the ads are coming up on
'Cause
Facebook.
I remember
Could
seeing
be.
an article where people that were checking the Facebook code said that they actually saw that it was listening to us. That's why. That's
Yeah.
the first thing I started thinking about it, and then I just started noticing, like, damn, all these ads. Shady as shit.
they do that. No, they actually do that. There's
Damn, Grim, you're super far.
Yeah, well, we looted like that whole place.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go this way. So, and I pinged, so my ping counts. You didn't ping.
I'm so confused. They ought to change their name to Up Your Ass.
See,
I'll throw a zip.
enough.
I'll throw a zip.
okay. Knock out, I'm back. I mean,
You were
it could
saying something,
it
Zip,
could
they do
be
that?
it could be
yeah.
Facebook. I'm not saying it's not, but like the Facebook audience is usually built from Google searches. Yeah, man.
a lot of your apps on your phone or whatever, right? Like the ads that show up on your Facebook aren't actually directly from they're not Facebook ads per se. They're like your Google app putting up the Google apps giving you.
Well, they're not.
ads.
The
Like-
people are actually paying for, and companies are paying for ads on Facebook. But the way they find it, right, are the cookies through Google and stuff. So you can actually build an audience on Facebook for just about anything. I mean, and Grim knows this. We've gone through this stuff.
But think about this too, though. When you sign up to use Facebook, the Facebook app and everything, it tells you that Google, it gives you the option that Google can share any of the of this and this and this with Google. So Facebook is actually sharing you're giving the rights to share when you do it. You're giving the rights to Facebook to share your
Yeah, you have to agree with it.
your information with Google. So
Yeah,
Google
but
is
if enough
it's
people
not they're
complain
not
about
doing
it,
it.
then
Yeah,
they'd
they're,
have to get rid of it.
but legally they're doing legally you're giving them the right.
Right.
To do it,
Anything you put on
right?
I don't
Facebook,
remember that. I think that might be a Canadian
anything you put
thing.
on Facebook, you no longer own. Any picture you put up on Facebook,
No,
you
that's,
don't own.
That's an American. That's just a period.
but-
thing, yeah.
I mean, I don't.
You
remember,
don't
I just
own
don't
any
remember
of
getting
the-
the
Right.
permission.
Yeah, but
You
I
want
mean,
to creep
get-
up
get
that
the
way?
ass
Sure.
Behind them?
Anytime when you go to go add the app, right? When you go to go add an app, you then have to press OK and you have to click the permissions to install the app.
Yeah, but
Right?
that's like things like permission to your mic and your contacts and stuff like that. It
Exactly.
doesn't- it doesn't
That's what it is.
explicitly
You're giving the
say.
rights. You're giving the rights for them to share the information, your information of your profile and your Google stuff, like your Google
Yeah, we might-
history.
we might be
and
talking
stuff.
about
Somebody's up on that
things.
crane.
they're up on the crane.
Yeah, no people are down there.
All right. You want to let them fuck around a minute?
Alright, yeah, I'm gonna come get this mag.
Damn, they zipped up to that crane, huh? I can throw us a zip line up
You
there,
have a
but I don't
zip?
know if I should yet. Yeah. If you want to, I can. Oh, I hear somebody coming outside.
I don't know. They
Put it
were
on the
just
roof?
talking about because
Uh-huh.
somebody had sued Instagram. Somebody had sued
Yeah, I think they're on
Instagram
the
or
roof.
something like
I'm gonna
that
climb
for
up the back.
something being
Yep,
for
yep,
something
right
being
up there.
posted.
Jumping down, jumping down. Oh, maybe he's not, but he was right there where I marked.
They're to the left side.
They're zipping.
Two people zip down, yeah.
Got one down.
Alright, nice. Got around the
there.
back side of the building to come up. Oh, they're grenading us too, so be
See,
careful.
Bitch. Didn't shoot me.
Right there's somebody.
Okay. Oh, I'm inside, Grim. I'm running towards you. Joe's on the roof behind me.
Oh man, they're fucking me up. Fuck. Shit, I don't think I can crawl off of this roof. Okay, yeah, I can.
Shit. Oh, damn it. Damn, this building's confusing.
Fuck.
Grip.
Are
goddamn.
they inside? Are they inside?
Yep, yep. Broke his shield. I think they.
Oh,
Oh,
there's two of them in there. Shit.
He only popped up when you ran in. That was a huge.
That does suck. It's exactly what I wanted to happen.
Yeah, it's super shady. I feel like it's a super invasion of privacy. I don't like it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I agree. But but my only thing is like, the ads are showing up on Facebook, but it's probably a different app that's listening. You know what I mean? Because it's not just Facebook. That's where you're noticing the ads. But I mean, it's also YouTube. Yeah, I mean, YouTube does targeted ads. Instagram's probably the same. Instagram's also owned by Facebook. Yeah, I mean, so there's it's probably Google. Google is such a big company. Because you're paying for the ads. You're paying, like on Facebook, you're paying Facebook to run the ads, but you're getting the information from Google, from people's Google searches. And like, even like apps that you're not using,
sign up for the Google
there's a ton of Google apps that are just automatically on your phone. Yeah, I mean, like Google, there's Gmail, there's OneDrive, I think is a Google thing.
OneDrive, yeah.
OneDrive's
Google
Microsoft, okay.
Google Maps.
But yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know what
they
you
have
mean.
another
I know
one
what-
that's
yeah.
like that.
Google's got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be called Google Drive actually, but yeah.
Right. So like, there's so many. Like my phone used to actually have a
I'm gonna go to this
like a
I'll go
folder,
with
like
that
a tab that I could click and would open up and would be a bunch of different Google apps. Like YouTube's a Google app. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
there's so many
yeah.
things. Yeah, man. Oh, there's somebody on me and I don't have a gun. I'm burning the shit out of them now.
Oh, I'm trying to get in there. Oh, there's somebody on me too. Damn, there's two people here. Got one. Oh, goddamn, two guys on me now.
Fuck, where are all the guns?
Oh, this shit is chaos. There's two squads spotting on around me. And here's part of one of them. Damn these fucking kids.
Yeah, and stop doing all the fucking bullets.
There's a kid coming, Joe. Right behind
Okay.
you. Right behind you. Damn, he's chaotic.
Yeah, I got 2 kills. Cause I the reason I ran was I saw somebody was getting somebody up with my pulse scan, so I wanted to.
Yeah, there was like there were at least 2 squads with us for 100% sure, but maybe more.
Yeah, there's people everywhere.
They're everywhere.
What are you growling at? You're asleep. What are you growling at? Stop growling at me. You're
Growling at my dreams, bro.
Yeah, it's funny to watch dogs dream.
When they,
yeah.
I like when they run
yeah,
this
that's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah,
It's always a good time.
Yeah.
You ever see a video where the dog's running in to sleep and then like he stands up and runs into the wall while he's sleeping? Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Yeah.
it really is. That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
They're filming him because he's like whimpering and like running in his sleep, and then like I don't know,
That's
changes
exactly
his
what
position
he's
enough to get his
trying to
feet
do right
down and actually like up. He only goes like I don't know, like 4 or 5 feet or something. I think it's been a while since I've seen it. And hits the
That's
wall.
hilarious, though.
That's what Siren's doing right now. She's sitting there, she's whimpering, she's barking in her sleep, she's moving around, she's running around where her legs are going.
That's cute when they do. I heard her whimpering there.
Oh god, yeah, she's pretty cute.
Oh, did I tell you about the show The Boys?
Yeah, no, I don't think you told me about it, but yeah, I was watching it. Yeah.
You watched it?
I've heard about it. I haven't
finished
seen
Yeah.
it today. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's the one that I told you. The dude runs through the girl and like turns her into a cloud of mist.
Yeah. Like a
Yeah.
cloud, yeah.
Insane in the membrane. Fucking like. The reason we watched it was because Kim read about that. So then we checked it out and like was like mind blown when it happened. I was like, what? Like, what? Did she just? What?
Wait,
It's like an action comedy,
Yeah.
right? Like
It's about yeah.
A-Train,
About
fastest
bad.
man in the world.
collateral damage.
Yeah, it's like if it's like a realistic take on superheroes, like they wouldn't be good guys. Well, they are good guys, but like they
They're more
yeah
bad than
because
They're
yeah because they know like they're
They're a
untouchables.
lot more
I mean
selfish.
like so it's like a business. It's all about like getting sponsors and like they have like press conferences and like saying the right things and that sort of thing. So it's pretty good.
Oh,
Yeah.
The Boys?
There's something else. I forget now. There was something when I saw it. I'm like, oh yeah, I think there's an anime like that that's similar. I forget. There's a similar concept that I've seen in another show. And I just don't remember what.
You Havoc over here. Somebody wants that shit. Triple T.
You are watching the Weeaboo channel.
The weeaboo. Uaboo.
I'm just kidding.
I ain't the boo, you the boo.
Select the fighter, real. I'm gonna drop this Eva soon, so I'm actually gonna drop this Eva right now. So there's an Eva and a blue shotgun. Oh, hey Grimbo. There's a prowler in this building along with a select fire on the first floor.
Noise.
There's some energy if you want it in 20 heavy right beside it. I'm sure you can
I
find
need a
that
bag.
anywhere, but
Bago. Okay.
yeah, me too. I'm just kidding with the weeaboo stuff, Joe. Just because you like anime, it's not the same thing.
Well, I'm super offended already, so. Tough titties.
Tough shit, you already offended me.
Tough titties. I'm gonna have to unfriend request you from Facebook. We just became Facebook friends.
You're canceled,
Yeah.
bro.
Is there any heavy?
Yeah, I have some I can share with you.
I feel like I saw some, but I don't have a bag.
Hey, can I?
Yeah.
Hey, can I pet your kitties?
Yes. You need heavy ammo? Boop. Right here. You're running away from me. Okay.
Yeah.
Out here. There's heavy up here.
Cool. Thank you. Up. It's sort of zip line that way.
Alright.
All right.
Bye, 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 bye.
Somebody sees a 301 or hemlock they don't need, I could use it.
Alright. Do you have a light gun on you that you could share or trade? I have a 301.
I got a P20
Take
turns
with
using
hammer
it?
point that I want. That's yeah. Take turns. You kill a guy, I kill a guy. You kill a guy.
Well, if you had like an alternator or something, we could swap.
Oh, I dropped a 45. Where did I
That's
put
alright.
that? Fuck out.
Oh, I'm being laser rifled.
Up.
Right here, on me there. I'm dropping my 301 right here.
Coming to you.
Oh shit! I'm gonna
Oh,
fall out
thank
too.
you, thank you.
They're in that building over there that I came.
Are they coming for us?
I hear footsteps.
They're zipping up there.
Yep. Yep. See if they'll attack us. Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
they
we
were
should attack
zipping
them
away
also.
from us, so I don't think they're gonna be.
Oh, I hear them right above me.
Couple caustic traps over there. You might be up top. I don't know.
If you want to go up off of the zip lines, we. Oh, never mind. I'm coming up.
I don't see them anymore. I just see the traps.
Shit. Oh shit. Yeah, I stepped into a trap like a fool. They sensed our badness and ran away.
There's a longbow there.
They're a bunch of bad mamagendas.
We ours.
Oh, here's somebody else zip. Oh, that's your rim. That's.
Oh, there's like a crow here. What are you doing here, crow?
Oh, you see somebody good? Oh, I see.
No,
him.
I'm
I
just
see
seeing
him.
the traps. Yeah, they're over there.
There's dudes over there.
Somebody else is smoking them.
We can push or. Oh, actually, let's get the fuck out of here because. Oh, never mind. Never mind. I thought the circle was way far away. All right, never
Oh
mind.
yeah, I see Gibraltar might happen.
You want to push them or?
You want to go? Yeah,
Let's go.
I'm down for that.
Oh man, I hate that. Doesn't let two people grab the thing at the same time. So when Grim grabbed it, I couldn't have made me fall to the ground.
Oh shit.
Second floor down there.
Yep.
But I'm in love with a
Broke his
creature,
shield.
man.
Ooh, hurt him more. Hurt him for about 30 more.
Somebody's right here.
24. There's an L star. Is that an L star? No. it's probably good.
Oh shit! Behind me! Behind me! Got him. Yeah, yeah.
Made their box fall. It's got a blue shield in here. Zero, you got the kill if you want it.
I have like
Take
50
it, take it.
Okay, I'll take it.
bullets.
There's bullets in here.
Damn, I still don't have a bag. There's no bag in here? Fuck, man. I can't even carry throwables now.
Oh man.
We got 1 minute for the ring.
Bagless.
You wanna go get on this?
There's a U
Probably
site
climb
there
up.
if anybody wants it or needs it.
I've got the bloodlust. I can't worry about sights right
Okay.
now.
Yeah, they're on the roof. Is that zip go over there?
I just threw another zip.
Alright, I'm like 20 seconds behind you.
Got one down.
Yay, loot up. Give me the bag, give me the bag.
Luda, Luda. Oh, here you go. You probably already got one.
Look at these cool guys. Taking all the stuff.
Super cool. Smoking fools like the super cools.
Smoking fools, smoking fools.
Green?
Oh shit, we gotta roll, we gotta roll. We're at the edge of the storm.
Yeah. Run. Hey, there's a
Ah,
long
shit.
zip to the next.
We jumped
where we
already
came
like
from.
sucker ass majuckas.
Sucker majuggers.
Oh man, I have way too much light. I have 320 light bullets. I do not need this much.
You're only ever a tap away from your new favorite show. From chilling true crime to the hottest takes in news, pop culture, and sports.
Yeah, more time than me. I didn't even look at everything.
Tap the banner to start listening.
Hey, you guys were talking the other day about Grimm's parents being kind of strict with cussing and stuff like that, and that's how the Sucker Majucka
Yeah.
origin. I remember when I was a kid, I had this kid, and I think their dad was an atheist and their mom was a Christian or something. I don't know if he was an atheist, but he was at least agnostic, you know, like, and like, hold up, oh, somebody right here. Two guys in there.
Got a gold shield right there. They're down. The person in this truck is down.
Yeah. That's my arm. Somebody threw an airstrike. Somebody right next to us. Might want to stay in the fucking thing.
Somebody's here. I hear footsteps.
Oh, it's two other people right here.
I'm coming, Joe. I'm coming.
I don't know how the fuck I missed those bullets. I'm burning somebody.
Revive yourself, Grim.
Fuck, man. Fudge sandwiches.
Yeah, that shit was rough. I missed all these shots with my P2020. Oh, Grim's
I could have
still up
sworn
and
I
kicking.
was. I had the aim right with the fucking prowler when I was shooting across to that person that was. Like, I was. Where Grim's looking, I was on the right side, shooting across that little gap to the person on the left. And I wasn't hitting him.
Oh, can I climb this? Yes.
Hell yeah, Grim. Oh, were you trying to hit Grim? You can't hit Grim with your bullets.
God damn it.
You did better than I did. I can't say nothing. But yeah, but you guys were saying he used that as a substitute. So this kid, his mom didn't even like him to say like dang because it was just a substitute for damn.
That's silly.
Dang.
I mean, yeah, some people are like that though. They be crazy. with your... Oh my god. Shit. Opie just... Oh man. Kim's gonna freak the fuck out. He just chewed a
Why,
pillow
you just-
from this $500 fucking couch that or chair that we just bought.
Yeah.
He's behind me. Then
All that super expensive
Yeah, so-
chair.
I'm
You were
dead.
talking
I'm gonna get
about?
a fucking gun, man.
Grim, I'm coming to you. Mark him for if you still see him.
Who's executing
Oh, yeah,
right here?
Oh shit, somebody just fucked me.
I
up.
just got a Mozambique and no shield.
I killed one of them. Oh damn.
Yeah, she's not gonna be.
No. And I didn't notice until I just fucking came in.
So many people tried to land in that bin.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I just bumped into the back of them
God
and fell
damn it,
down.
Opie. You
Got
fucking
Instantly slaughtered.
fucking piece of shit, Opie. You are such a piece of shit.
Dude,
Alright, I gotta turn my stream off for a couple minutes while I beat the living shit out of this dog. I'll be right back.
when I worked at
Get
the
'em.
phone company, there was this guy, and he's kind of a friend, I guess. He was friendly, whatever. And he had a pretty good looking wife. I mean, she wasn't like awesome, but she looked good, you know. But
Yeah.
my gosh, dude, I've never seen somebody be abused by his spouse like that, dude. She would call him at work and be berating him. from his
Yeah.
wife. It was, I mean, it's a similar thing.
It's an abusive relationship.
I mean,
He
it's
just
like an
walks
every
all
night
over
thing, and
himself.
like the constant chewing, but it was metaphorical chewing with his wife. Right, right, right.
I like to have a little fun. So what?
Trust me, I know what I'm doing.
Let's have fun, friend.
Oh man. All right, yeah.
Introducing your champion.
Haven't we landed yet? What's the holdup?
Oh no.
Oh, they did it to the chair. I thought you were talking about their bed. Like their pillow. It was the pillow of the chair. Oh shit. Damn, that's fucked up. I just got a new jacket, leather jacket, the one I was wearing to the hayride. The next day, fucking one of them, I think it was Sam, fucking chewed like a hole in it, in the leather.
Oh fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the training works, you know, that's well worth it. Okay.
All right,
Trying to get to you, Joe.
I'll be right over. I just need a gun. Maybe a vest. There we go. Got a vest. Oh, there's a white vest over
I
here.
hear him, Joe. If you see him, let me.
First blood.
Oh, someone got the party started.
Body shield here. Level 1.
Oh,
Alternator
okay.
here.
Yeah, I think they're on the roof.
Let's explore this way.
Yep.
No, here they are.
They're up there.
Two of them. I broke one of their shields.
God.
Oh,
damn.
we got murked. Yeah, man. Maybe we should play some.
Was that the
ranked
blue
to
area?
fucking Put some stakes on it. Oh, hold up. Let me take a pee real quick. I gotta throw something in the dryer here. Be right back. Burb.
Burp.
Ready.
Do you
Maybe
work
go to
tomorrow?
sleep. Oh yeah. But wait, so talking
did-
to, then write up, and then third write up fired.
Yeah.
So did
So-
get talking to? So you just call out for like 2 weeks before you get fired?
How many times do I gotta tell you, man, I'm in my motherfucking bag right now. Epidemics, I see you. Amsterdam, I see you. The whole fucking world, I see you. Going back on tour right away. Catch me in your city, man. We worldwide now, baby.
Discover an education in whole person healthcare at Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, where students learn to engage meaningfully with patients, healthcare teams, and communities. Join
You were glitching
Kristen
out
Webb
there,
at the
Joe.
Graduate
One
Program's
what?
Open House, November 15th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Meet faculty and students and take
Grim,
a
can
tour
you-
of campus.
Maybe his shit
Register
died. I
today
don't know.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you now.
at
Yeah.
PCOM.edu.
Hopefully I'm on
He's probably
unready
still
just in case.
telling a
this-
story.
Oh, there you are. Now I can.
We can now. We couldn't hear you for a while. Are you ready? Are you doing something? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we couldn't hear you.
White people hate me, they say that I'm using my privilege for evil, I get it, hey. Black people hate me, they say that I'm
Yeah.
racist, my
Last thing you were saying was something about.
feminists hate me because I believe that their movements are angry and sexist. My girlfriend hates me and I don't know why, but I love her, whatever, forget it, yeah. And gay people hate me because when I see something I don't like, I say that it's gay. Straight people hate me for having the balls to go say what they think and that makes them afraid. Dumb people hate me for making no music containing the truth to expose all the ways. The government robs them, the pop culture kills them, the rappers convince them to ruin their brains. Go ahead and say all that wild shit online, man. You might need a Dr. Phil if you catch me outside, and I will not apologize if you ain't on mine, fam. I cannot afford to give.
So you get mad strikes. They're combined.
Everyone hates me for something or makes something up when they hate me for nothing. They claim I'm a Satanist. Hitler's my cousin. I beat up a kid. I killed Bambi while hunting. Hey, I heard he's Illuminati. Hey, I heard he's related to Trump. Whoa, I heard he's reptilian probably. Hey, I heard he kills kittens for fun. All lies, all lies, all lies. Y'all fall lie rise. Yeah, y'all phony tough and I'm blowing up and that's your fault, not mine. Yeah, everybody hates me and I only know.
Did you say something, anything to anybody yet?
No.
Go ahead and say all of that wild shit online, man. You might need a Dr. Phil if you catch me outside.
I would still mention something about it though, just so they don't expect it to be a permanent thing.
I just hope I don't have to fight with that smiling robot. I'm just kidding. He's fine. Everyone's fine. The championship is ours.
I know what you're looking for. A man.
Hating who you'll never be. Y'all are 35, acting like you're 17. Working late at 9 to 5s, jealous of this rap and sleep. You're angry at your life.
Introducing your champion.
Yeah.
In the only town you'll ever see. They've been hating.
I'm the jump master.
Fake friends making me stupid money. They've been hating, making me famous. Keep hating, you're wasting. All they
Good job, Master.
Good feeling
Go.
about this area. Here we go. Ready up.
Yeah. Why do you have to step up and down on the compactor? Isn't it just like
Big machine.
some shit you throw stuff in? High up.
Have somebody in this building with me. Don't know where.
I don't have a real gun yet.
Let's go this way. Body shield here. Level 1.
Beginning ring countdown.
Knockdown shield here. Level 1.
And I can't hit a single fucking shot out of 4 trigger pulls. Oh my gosh. Fuck you, Juan. Fuck you, Juan. Got her. Shit.
Downed an enemy.
Nice job. Nice job.
I put a scout in that box.
Here. Level 2.
I ain't like that weird shit.
Hell no.
I mean, it works good for there, but
I'm just joking.
I don't like that shit. So there should be one more left. Anybody have any extra light? I only have 31 bullets.
I got nothing except my ammo on my heavies.
Annoying.
Pro tip.
Watch for them.
Bullets don't hurt enemies if you don't point your gun at them.
What? Yo, so you're telling me you gotta aim the gun at people? What?
Jeez, what? I thought I thought it was
Footsteps.
just like
Is
a
that
scare
us or
tactic
no?
kind of thing.
Probably us. We're all, yeah.
Rings close. 1 more minute.
Alright, you wanna go? Wait, what's that noise? Somebody.
Oh, somebody's
just, like,
jumping in.
Flew on our roof or something.
Got him.
Nice.
Good work, team. Great. The ring is close. Less than.
There's a lot. Damn. We can't find any ammo, can we? I mean, I picked
I
up
have a
some, but I still
syringe,
got
Joe. You
30
need a syringe?
rounds.
Oh shit, right there.
Okay. He's only got like 50 health.
10 seconds.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, I smoked
damn
him
it.
too.
Oh, I'm down. Kid right here. Kid right there.
Shit. God, there's 2 of them over there.
Damn, they're on all 3 sides.
Yeah.
Recharging my shield. It's not safe here.
Hell yeah.
I'm taking shots.
Way to go, dudes. I think you just got 1 left. Yep. In that construction site, Grim.
Teammates banned.
Hail to the youth. Way to go, y'all. Yeah, get my tag if you can't. Oh, you got it. Okay. Yeah. Whatever you. I got nades and heals, syringes, couple
Are
of
you the one
syringes.
throwing the, Oh yeah, shit, I need real guns. I'm still carrying around like a shotgun and shit. What kind? Shotgun, energy. I put some light in, I think, that box. Here's light in this one, yeah. There's no heavy guns in here? Wait, so the other people, you killed people out in the street, too? Flatline, maybe.
I think the closest revive is at the. Oh, did somebody just?
Oh,
use
the wall's coming in.
Somebody just used the one, the fuel depot.
Prowler SMG here. Extended heavy mag here. Level 2.
Oh, shit. The storm's here. Fuck, you're about to get burned. Hurry up.
Yeah, you gotta move. You gotta move.
Setting a portal.
I'm just running, because otherwise I'll be standing in the storm waiting.
New kill leader. Watch for them.
The train is coming right by y'all. Somebody just got revived about a minute ago where you're.
Oh, there's somebody
headed,
running
so
out
you
of the
know.
storm back there. You ready? Fuck him up. You ready? No, they're running in
Yeah,
right now.
coming back in
Follow
it.
me. Let's see him.
Ooh, good shot.
Sending out my decoy.
Hostile right here.
good shot. Good energy rifle shit. Good shit.
Enemy team.
Like, uppercut him into oblivion.
Oh shit, another one.
Shit.
Giving my shield to recharge.
Shit.
Recharging my shield.
Oh, he's zipping away. Or zipping towards you, okay.
Oh shit. I'm getting out of here. I'm getting fucked up. Slide down the hill. Slide down the hill.
Reloading. Look out, Chris. One shot. Getting shot at.
Somebody
There.
activated bird mode over there. I'm almost dead. Shit. Where you at, bird?
Yeah, Joe. Yeah, Grim.
I got the kill for you.
Enemy killed.
There's somebody in the building right. I need to heal though. I'm almost dead.
Giving my shield to recharge.
Shit. Shit, that's another squad back there still. God damn.
You
I
guys
got
were doing
lit up.
champion style on that one though. That was pretty sweet.
See.
We went from lame to fame in one game.
Lame to
Put it on
fame in a game.
ranked. Look at that shit.
Did we get points?
You guys both got over 7. I did half decent.
42 points. I'm not at the
Nah.
bare minimum gold anymore. Yay.
Don't be hating.
How are you?
Maybe that. You got any viewers on the stream right now, Joe? Cool beans.
Yeah, we putting the work in.
Man, you've got enough viewers, but they just don't all get on at the same time. Nice. Oh, okay. 2 at a time. Yeah.
So maybe 11 total over the whole course of a stream, maybe?
I don't take myself too seriously. I don't take myself anywhere, really. Man, I need to get out more.
With the right moves, they take this win. This is your champion.
You think I'm afraid of you?
Push.
Hold my own back.
So you have 2 and you need 50?
Okay. Oh, you can get
40.
50, or you don't have to have the 3 average concurrent viewers if you have 50.
You need a bunch of stuff.
They make it too damn hard, dude. It's fucking ridiculous to get started.
I say we land here. Loud and clear.
Okay.
This might be a good place
Oh, this is that big building. Yeah, I'll land here with you guys then. I thought it was from up there. It looked like a little building.
Right.
Eva 8 here.
Yeah.
Already inside.
Little something something.
Flatline here.
Ooh, flatline. Woo.
You know, I was on a pornographic video site the other day, and I saw, some
Backpack here.
some woman, and like on her video it said "Watch PewDiePie" or some shit. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, what? I wonder if this was like a sanctioned thing, or if this is just some slut that likes PewDiePie and is also making homemade porn, or I was confused. Big PewDiePie fan?
Let's do this. Spitfire here.
Did he really?
Bam! Bam, 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 bam! What the fuck?
What?
Oh shit.
Prowler SMG here.
No, I mean there wasn't any money changing hands. Maybe
It's probably just the dumbass.
them
I'm gonna go
random
see what
fuckers
that's
that-
all about.
Think of it.
Yeah, I'm with you, I'm with you.
Threw my grenade out. Throw my grenade. Frag out. Fire, friends. Throw an arc star.
Right here, right through here.
50,000 podcasts on Spotify.
Ran up the
You're
stairs,
only
ran up the stairs.
away from your new favorite
Shit.
show. From chilling true crime.
I'm with you.
There's something for everyone. Tap the link to start listening now.
Oh, there's two of them, there's two of them.
Got one. Ah, this one.
I downed an enemy.
Nice. Right here, coming at you, medic.
Heads up.
She's running,
New kill
she's
leader.
running back.
Need to recharge my
She's
shield.
the last one. Wow. Oh, she's getting
She's
somebody out.
trying to get her dude up, but she just paused. She's getting him up now. Getting him up now. Oh, good try, good try. That right when I was shooting at whoever I was shooting at there, they were juking back and forth with like, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 feet between like when they would go left to right. Like they were just like super tight, and I was having real trouble hitting them. And I was juking too, but I mean maybe you ought to do that. Maybe you ought to just left right as fast as you fucking can. I don't know.
Yeah, that's if you don't aim down sights, you can go faster and further like that.
Oh yeah, maybe you should be hip firing and juking like that at close range. I don't
That's
know.
how
I guess
they
it
can
depends
juke
on your
fast
gun.
like that, yeah. I know if you're aiming down sights, you can't do it fast. like that.
Right, right. Yeah, maybe that's smart. I don't know. It was smart in that case. Yeah, I gotta make myself hip fire. I mean, I do
But my-
sometime anyway, but gotta practice more.
I look faster when I'm not down sights, so I can't aim as good when I'm not down sights.
Yeah, me neither, but
It's
you
too
gotta
wild.
get better at it. Yeah, it is wild. But... Yeah, that's what they say.
Practice makes you gooder.
Math makes you happier.
Well, you got to work tomorrow, Joe.
Not calling out?
I know what you're looking for.
No cluster foxtrots in my unit.
Do you have insurance now? Because maybe I'll heal better if we do take off. And if you get a doctor's note for a few days, then you can't get in trouble. Yeah, but you might as well not use them up if it's for a legit reason. You know? No, really? Even if even if you have a note?
Where I used to work, if you were salaried, at least for a long time, they had this thing in the handbook that said you could, like come in. This was not meant to be abused, but you could come in like up to 3 hours late if you had to, or something, and you know, as long as you were still coming in and doing your job. And some crazy lady that had a job there as like webmaster or something, like would come in late constantly, dude. Like, I mean, this is before I worked there. My boss was telling me about it, and like every day she was several hours late, or most days, you know, and she just fuck around and all this stuff. And so they fired her, and she sued them because in the employee handbook it explicitly said you didn't have to, like, you know, talk to human resources or something like that if you were up to 3 hours late. So she just did it like every day. Okay.
Okay.
Like,
did one of you guys land here? Because these are open.
I did. Yeah, that's me.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, and like I just thought that was kind of funny. Like the lady was, my boss was telling me the lady was crazy as fuck. Like her birthday was in December,
Good this way.
but she wouldn't celebrate it in December because Jesus' birthday fell in December. And like, yeah, I mean that's. Woo. Well, I mean, he might have been a real historical person, but yeah, not in my mind, yeah, but yeah, and yeah, and the Christmas date, he was actually probably born in like a totally different month of the year and stuff, like you said.
Did he actually born in the summer or something?
Something like that. Yeah, some other month in December for sure.
Havoc here.
Well, apparently during his time, there were a lot of people claiming to be the same, you know, prophesied Jewish Messiah. Okay.
Alright, I'm flying over.
I busted his shield. Got him. Busted that kid's shield. He's down. Hell to the yeah. Oh shit! Trying to heal. Throwing gas traps. Okay.
Are they near you? Where are these guys at?
Oh, back here. I'm sorry, I had no health heals. I got excited. One kid, as far as I know.
We're getting somebody up, I hear it. Or is that you guys?
She's getting me up.
This won't hurt. Hold on.
You.
Yep,
Shit.
you are wonderful. Thank you. Reloading.
Yep.
Recharging shields.
Here's 2 syringes.
Awesome. Change it.
Gotta patch myself up. Administering medical aid.
Arcstar here.
Just gotta patch myself up. Hang on.
Dude, that devotion just saved my ass.
Heavy ammo here.
Well, I mean, y'all saved my ass, but it got 2 downs that I wasn't expecting.
Shield cell here. Optics here.
Can either of you spare us 1 shield cell?
Yeah.
Shield cell here.
Thank you.
There's 3 there for you. I still have 6.
Oh, I should have taken that. Do you want that R99? I'm taking the Prowler back.
The wall's coming.
Oh shit. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Actually, if we run through here, it's probably best.
Yeah, thank you. We're right behind you.
This shit's looted. So. Is this the vault? Keep my head in here real quick.
Gotta hop up here. Turbocharger.
So it's not the
Zero probably did it. Because both of you, I think, were shooting at the same time. Zero probably has that kill. So I didn't get it. I
Oh
did
yeah,
the
I got
first
3
part,
kills. I
but
got 3
didn't
kills.
finish it.
I don't know how I got 3 kills, but I only counted 2, but that's what it says. Oh
Almost
yeah,
there.
maybe I finished Grimm's kill, but he almost had him dead, and I
There's
just tapped
somebody.
him or something. Oh shit.
That's the one Joe thought he had. But I guess you got it.
I've got the gas cloud, but I've lost track of him here. I'm trying to get the fuck to safety. Okay. Yep.
Enemy down. Back here. Level 3.
Yeah.
Where is it at? Oh, 2 of them. Got 1 other shield broke. 1 of them is here. The shield broke one is over there. Somewhere he did his ultimate illusion man. Oh, good try. Shit.
Do you see how fast he switched his gun and was able to kill me there?
Oh, that's lame.
Get out of here.
We made some more points though, I think.
I'm gonna take a smoke break. I'll be back in a few minutes. Yeah. Let's see. No, I got negative
Is that
4.
your-
Are you only
You
playing
say you
one
gotta
game
go to
after
bed,
this?
Joe? Okay,
No, I'll
okay.
play and then smoke.
Curb your nicotine. It's the call of the video games. Grim, I'll probably play 1 or 2 more with you, but while you're taking a cigarette break, I'm gonna eat something.
No. Yeah, I'm not playing much longer either.
Okay, yeah. We're all
Definitely go
all
for
got
it.
our shit.
Smoke a rat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you say you're only gonna cut down the days of stream, you mean playing Xbox together or just streaming?
That.
Then you won't have to make clips and set the computer up and shit.
How much are you wanting to cut off? Cut down to?
But he's talking about streaming, Zed.
Yeah. Whatever cut it. No. I would.
Let's make a choice. Land here.
Exactly.
Dropping in. Hang on.
Maybe doing it like every second day, so cut out Thursdays.
Oh, fuck, I bounced off.
I think someone's targeting me.
Oh shit! Somebody's sniping at me from the box over there.
Okay. I'm with Joe. Right.
I'm going into this place.
Might be something good this
I
way.
don't have a vest or cool guns. Are you fighting them already? Yeah.
There's also a medic right here. Just set up a
Coming.
gas trap. She's hurt for about 20 something. Yeah, I got fucked
You getting executioned?
Hey, Grim's still in there. Oh,
What?
fuck.
If I could throw a second thing, I was dead. What the fuck, man?
Yeah, that shit. I don't know how that guy was fucking hitting me. I think he was shooting at me with a shotgun. And then the medic killed me, which wasn't the same guy, but I was getting hit really long range with what I thought was a shotgun while I was missing my 301, so I don't know.
Gotta love that shit. Do another one, Jeff?
Dude.
That was quick or not?
Alright.
Well, good night, man.
Yeah, see you in a couple. Alright.
Yeah. Alright. Sounds
Gri-
like a plan.
Sounds
Alright, and I'm gonna
good.
smoke Joe, and I'll be back soon. Alright,
Okay, I'm gonna eat
later,
and
man.
I'll be back. I'll say in the party. Have a good one, Joe.
Alright, see you.
Alright, I'm getting off too. Yeah. See ya.
Have a good one, Zed.
Alright, later, Zed.
I'll be back.
Sounds good.
I'll be back in a few, Grim.
With more than 450,000 podcasts on Spotify, you're only ever a tap away from your new favorite show. From chilling true crime to the hottest takes in news, pop culture, and sports, there's something for everyone. Tap the banner to start listening now.